There is a very specific feeling that happens when you return somewhere after many years away. Your hometown, your old school, a game you used to play as a child, a street you haven't walked through in years. At first, everything almost feels the same. The buildings are still there, the roads still look familiar. The atmosphere feels strangely untouched. But then, you start noticing the differences. A small shop disappeared, someone moved away, the trees became taller, people who once felt old suddenly seem fragile. And slowly, something strange begins happening. It feels like you are seeing two versions of reality at the same time. The place that exists now and the version that still exists in your memory. And I think that's the real reason Frieren feels so emotionally different from almost every fantasy anime. Because Frieren is not really about adventure, at least not in the traditional sense. It's about returning to an adventure after life already moved on. And that creates a very unusual emotional experience. Because the series constantly recreates the feeling of revisiting something familiar, only to realize time quietly changed it while you were gone. Most fantasy stories end after the heroes defeat the greatest threat in the world. That's usually where fulfillment exists. The final battle is over, the journey is complete, the heroes become legends. But Frieren starts after all of that already happened. And that changes the emotional structure of the story completely. Because the original adventure already feels distant before the series even begins. The audience never truly lives inside the golden age directly. We experience it through fragments, flashbacks, remembered conversations, old stories, emotional residue, just like real memories. And that's important, because Frieren doesn't feel like watching a legendary adventure in the present. It feels like looking back at one. And maybe that's why the series resonates with so many people. Not simply because it's about time, and not simply because it's nostalgic, but because Frieren recreates something deeply human, the experience of revisiting a former life. Not reliving it, revisiting it. And those are two very different things. Because when humans revisit the past, we don't return to the same place emotionally. We return as different people. The genius of Frieren is that the new journey constantly mirrors the old one. The group revisits old villages, old battlefields, old memories, old promises, places connected to people who are now gone. But the series never treats this as simple nostalgia bait, because everything changed. And that's exactly what creates the emotional power. Frieren isn't trying to recreate the past exactly as it was. She's confronting the distance between past and present. And that feeling is incredibly familiar in real life. When you revisit your childhood home, you don't literally become your younger self again. Instead, you suddenly become aware of the gap between who you were, who you thought you would become, and who you actually became. And Frieren constantly recreates that emotional tension. The journey feels familiar, but never identical. Comforting, but slightly melancholic at the same time. Because every place, carries the awareness that time passed through it. And I think this is one of the most powerful aspects of the series. Frieren often experiences her own memories almost like an outsider, as if she's visiting a version of life that no longer fully belongs to her. And honestly, that's an extremely human feeling. Sometimes enough time passes that your younger self begins feeling like another person. Old friendships feel distant, old dreams feel unfamiliar, even old memories stop feeling fully connected to who you are now. You don't just remember your past anymore, you observe it. And Frieren visualizes this beautifully, especially through Himmel's character, because part of Frieren's tragedy is not simply losing him. It's realizing she never fully understood the emotional importance of those moments while she was living inside them. Only later, only after enough time passed, and that regret feels painfully real, because many people eventually realize that certain periods of their lives were meaningful only after they were already gone. Another reason Frieren feels different is because the world does not revolve around Frieren herself. Most fantasy worlds feel strangely frozen around the protagonist. Characters wait for the hero, locations exist mainly for plot progression, the world pauses until the story reaches it. But Frieren's world keeps moving. People grow older, get married, build families, inherit stories, open businesses, lose loved ones, continue living entire lives off screen. And because of that, even very small interactions often feel surprisingly deep and touching. Not because the scenes are dramatic, but because the series constantly reminds us that every person already has a life beyond the frame. The world continues remembering, and that creates something rare in fantasy. A sense that history existed before the protagonist arrived, and will continue after she leaves. One of the most fascinating things about Frieren is how locations stop feeling like simple locations. Every place becomes layered with emotional history. A field is also where someone once loved, where someone made a promise, where someone said goodbye, where someone died. And that's exactly how humans experience meaningful places in real life. A childhood home is never just a building. An old classroom is never just a room. Certain places become emotional archives. You walk through them while simultaneously seeing invisible versions of the past layered over the present. And Frieren constantly visualizes this feeling, not through dramatic exposition, but through quiet pauses, repeated locations, landscapes, flashbacks, conversations interrupted by memory. The world almost feels haunted, not by ghosts, but by memory itself. And I think this is also why Frieren feels unusually mature emotionally. A lot of fantasy stories are fundamentally about becoming stronger, finding purpose, reaching destiny. But Frieren is much more interested in retrospection, in looking back. And adulthood changes the way people experience time. When we are younger, life feels endless and future-oriented. But eventually, many people begin measuring life differently. Through memory, through absence, through comparison between past and present versions of themselves. Frieren understands this perfectly. That's why the pacing feels so quiet and reflective. The series is not rushing toward destiny, it lingers, the same way memory lingers. And instead of asking, what will these characters become, Frieren often asks something much more emotional. What did these moments actually mean? And maybe nowhere is this more visible than in Himmel character himself. Because Himmel doesn't just feel like a former companion, he almost feels like the embodiment of a past era of life. What makes him so emotionally powerful is that we mostly experience him through memory, through stories, through recollections, through emotional reconstruction. Different people remember him differently. Some remember his kindness, some remember his heroism, some remember small gestures that seemed insignificant at the time. And that's incredibly realistic, because real people rarely survive in memory as complete individuals. They survive as fragments, a phrase, a smile, a habit, a moment someone never forgot. And Frieren slowly realizes that she misunderstood Himmel precisely because she experienced him in the present, while everyone else experienced him through memory. Sometimes we only recognize the emotional importance of people after enough time passes. And that may be one of the most human regrets the series captures. And maybe that's why Frieren feels comforting instead of hopeless, because the series never suggests that the past can truly return exactly as it was. It can't. People disappear, places change, time keeps moving forward, but Frieren slowly discovers something equally important. The value of the past does not disappear simply because it ended, and revisiting old memories is not really about trying to live inside them again. It's about finally understanding what they meant. That's why Frieren's journey feels so human, because in the end, she isn't really retracing an old adventure. She's learning how to emotionally return to a life she once moved through too quickly to fully understand. And maybe that's why watching Frieren sometimes feels less like a fantasy and more like returning to a place you once called home. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy this kind of film analysis, consider subscribing.